All right, tell me who you are and your title.
I'm erika-gunn. I'm the Executive Director of the Humane Society of Scott County.
And so it sounds like the city and the Humane Society are going to be ending their contract here in June and then extend services until the end of 2026. Can you tell us a little bit about what caused the impasse, why this contract is not being renewed?
Yeah, we've been in discussion since the beginning of last fiscal year, so July. We've been in negotiations since 2022, 2023, but this new contract started in July. And so at the same time, we also began talking about what's the next contract look like, because they've only been 1-year agreements for now. And so in August, we sent them kind of an initiation letter to just say, hey, this is what services cost. And we're asking for $1.1 million, which would cover services, including additional revenue that's received as part of the contract service. And then in October, they responded and stated that that isn't an amount that they could pay. And they provided a counter offer of $840,000 for a 3-year contract with a 3% increase each year. And this is the $1.2 million has been an amount that's been talked about since 2022. The contract services haven't increased over time. They've always been around that amount for the last multiple years, but we've just really wanted to work with the city to try and get to a point where their services were covered completely. And so in good faith, we were always working to, what can we do to help bridge that gap and things like that as they continue to work towards being able to pay that full service cost. And so in the beginning of December, we responded with an offer to provide services for $986,000 starting in fiscal year 2027, so this July 1st. And that would be a 3-year contract as well, with a 5% increase to help continue to get us to a closer amount that would pay and actually cover for full services for the city of Davenport. And they weren't able to do that either. And so we kind of discussed what services would be able to be eliminated so that there was the possibility of them paying less, but there would also be a service difference. And that initial discussion was the elimination of weekend services from animal control officers. We recommended against that, but also understood that the city was working to try and, get to a place that they could pay for the services. And so we offered that, and that wasn't something that they accepted either. And so at the beginning of January, they reached out and verbally expressed that they had plans to open and operate their own shelter and animal control services, because they would be able to differentiate revenue sources for that versus when they pay a contract, it has to come out of just their general fund. And so we, as requested, provided them an offer to continue services past the June 30th date while they prepare to open their own animal shelter and animal control services.
Yeah, and can you talk about what went into coming up with that 1.1 or $1.2 million number that it, costs to provide services?
Yeah. So that $1.2 million that it costs to provide services is pretty benchmark with other animal control shelters, especially in the state of Iowa, when we talk about per capita. And so that number is a pretty benchmark number. For us, what goes into that is the basics of performing the animal control contract, and it doesn't include anything that's above and beyond in terms of medical care or additional resources that we fund as the nonprofit side of this partnership. And so we take our total budget, we remove everything that is kind of a program that we don't expect any city to pay for that's not part of the contract, any staffing positions that aren't part of performing that contract. We remove all of that. For the entire county, we perform animal control services for about $1.8 million. And so Davenport, we then use what percentage of calls and animal intakes from the entire county are theirs, and then we use that amount to say, okay, this is the breakdown of what those services are per that percentage, and that is the $1.233 million amount.
Yeah, and what's involved with that? Like, obviously you have animal control officers that respond to calls for stray animals. Can you kind of talk through that?
Yeah, everything involved in that $1.2 million cost is the staffing that's directly needed to perform those services. It's the building itself, because we own and maintain the building, so there's a cost associated with Davenport being able to utilize this building to house their stray animals. There's also the cost of basic vaccinations for animals. It is state law that every animal being adopted is required to be spayed and neutered, so that's also part of the contract. It also includes all medical care in terms of basic treatment, anything that's above and beyond, such as a leg amputation or a major surgery, or things that the nonprofit side fundraises for, so that we can still make those possible.